Hello and welcome everyone to Intersection Safety, Real Life Driving. Now up to this point, I've kept things pretty simple, but now it's time to get real. So as you can see, I've added all kinds of landscaping, vehicles, the odd person walking around, a few dogs. It's looking like a realistic neighborhood. Now it's probably not always this busy, but it sure can be. Now, before we get started back at that busy neighborhood, let's talk about the board for a moment. If you remember, back in the first intersection safety video, I used these yellow lines as a visual aid to show you what the distance of 3 vehicle lengths from the intersection looked like. But in this video, I'll be using these vehicles here to represent that distance instead. Now, the reason I've moved from the yellow lines to actual vehicles is because I'm going to film this lesson from 2 different camera angles. This view here, which is the overhead view, and then this view here represents what you would see from inside the vehicle. So because of this second camera angle, I need a 3D vehicle to kind of work off as I film the video. Now, the reason there are 2 different colored vehicles here is because the white vehicles represent the vehicles at the intersection, and these 2 vehicles are not nearly as important as the 3 vehicles behind them. And here's why. As you approach the intersection, you're usually able to see the vehicle in this spot here, and that's because it's super rare to have visual blockages this close to the intersection. This span here equals about 5 to 6 meters, 15 to 20 feet, so that's roughly the size of a larger vehicle. Now, because we're never allowed to park this close to the intersection, this visibility is usually always available to us. So that's why the white vehicles aren't as important to know about as the red vehicles when it comes to our safety. Now, in regards to these 3 red vehicles, remember, you measure from the front of your vehicle forward. So this is 1 vehicle length from the intersection, 2 vehicle lengths from the intersection, and 3 vehicle lengths from the intersection. Now, when I'm doing the lesson, I'm not going to be saying all of that. Mostly because it's exhausting, so I'm just going to refer to them as vehicles 1, 2, and 3. And I also want you to keep in mind, these vehicles here don't really exist. They are just props. They're basically a 3D version of the yellow line that was there before. Okay, so we're done with the board. Let's get started with the lesson. Okay, so in the first scenario, I'll be going straight through at the intersection where I will have a visual blockage in the form of this huge landscaping at the corner to my left. And as we get started, you're going to notice that the 3-2-1 plan will become a little flexible. I'll still be using all of the parts of the plan, but there will be some changes compared to when I approached the intersections that didn't have visibility issues. Okay, here we go. So I have now reached the distance of 3 vehicle lengths from the intersection, so it's time to get busy with step 1, a sweeping scan of the intersection. Now, I'm about to show you how that looks from inside the vehicle, but during this video, when I'm showing you shots from inside the vehicle, I will only be concentrating on the area that has the visual obstruction. Okay, so here we go. So, as always, I start at the corner to my left, where I'm able to see that there is a stop sign, but it's not for my direction of travel, and there are no pedestrians. And of course, I can see the white vehicle. Then I continue on, moving my eyes and my head just slightly to better my scan, and then poof, just as the red vehicle 1 is coming into view, it becomes blocked by this huge monstrosity on the corner. So as you can see, the red vehicle 1 and 2 basically disappear behind this landscaping. I mean, the camera is stopped and I am focusing in on that area and I can still barely see anything. So imagine how little you'll be able to see as you're actually driving down this street. That's why you're going to want to pay close attention when I start talking about speed control. And then finally, my scan has cleared the landscaping and I'm able to see vehicle number 3. Now, as I'm doing my sweeping scan, as soon as I realize that I have a visual blockage this huge where anything can be happening, I want to immediately get started on speed control. I don't want to wait until I finish the whole sweeping scan to move on to step 2, because every second counts when you have a visual blockage this large. Now, in regards to speed control, because I'm driving on a flat surface, all I really need to do is ease my foot off the gas pedal to start the slowing process. So I just split my concentration for a quick second to get that started, and then I'm fully back concentrating on the rest of my sweeping scan. And then once I've finished with the sweeping scan, in regards to step 3, communication, well, just hold that thought for a moment. Okay, it's time for me to point something out. So when I say coming off the gas pedal can be a natural slowing process, here's how that works. So just by me taking my foot off the gas pedal, on a flat surface, my vehicle will begin to slow in a nice smooth manner. Now, if I'm going up a hill, it could slow my vehicle really fast, probably too fast. And if I'm going down a hill, it won't slow my vehicle at all. I would need to apply my brakes to do any type of slowing. So keep this in mind as we get back to step 3, communication. So when I use the technique of coming off the gas pedal only to slow my vehicle, even though it's a really nice, smooth way to reduce my speed, because I'm not using my brake light doesn't come on to tell the people behind me that my speed is changing. So because I believe I'm going to lower my speed probably at least 10 kilometers per hour, to make things a little safer, I want to use half of the technique that we've talked about in other videos, which is the cover your brake part of the cover your brake and horn, which is where I'll take my foot off the accelerator and bring it over and just barely rest it on the brake pedal, because that slight amount of pressure on the brake pedal will activate my brake lights to signal to anyone behind me that my speed may be changing. But since it's just the slightest amount of pressure, if I do it right, it won't actually add to the slowing process, because at this point, I don't want to slow down a lot. Okay, so we've covered the 3 steps required for the 3 vehicle length distance, where I finally got through the sweeping scan. I took my foot off the gas pedal to naturally start the slowing process, and because of that, I put a very little pressure on my brake pedal just to activate my brake lights, which communicates to others that my speed may be changing. And now it's time to start the steps for the 2 vehicle length distance. So normally when I reach this distance, the seeing habit is the quick scan, and I would start at checkpoint 1 and then move on to checkpoint 2 and 3, 4, yada yada. But because this intersection is unique due to this huge landscaping, I need to change that up a bit. Because anytime I don't get full visibility during my first sweeping scan, I need to repeat the scan in that area. So instead of the normal quick scan, where I would jump my eyes from checkpoint 1 over to checkpoint 2, I'll actually do a sweeping scan from checkpoint 1 to checkpoint 2, along this left corridor here, to see if my visibility is any better now that I've traveled a little further up the street. And then I can continue on with the regular quick scan from there, jumping my eyes from checkpoint 3 to 4, etc. Okay, here I go, scanning my first checkpoint, which is the corner to my left, and nothing has changed there. So now I will sneak in another little sweeping scan along this area here where I have the visual blockage. And right away, I can barely see the first half of the red vehicle 1, and then, as you can see, now vehicles 2 and 3 have disappeared behind the landscaping. So this is a prime example of why it is so important to do all of the scans at each vehicle length distance, because what you can and cannot see will continue to change at each distance. Now, seeing that I still have this visual blockage, which by the way is on my side of the vehicle, so if something goes wrong, like the driver to my left runs their stop sign, we're talking a possible T-bone collision here, where I'm the soft little top part of that T. So knowing that, once again, I need to get right on to step 2, speed control, to give myself a little extra time in case someone's doing something they shouldn't be doing. So in regards to speed control, this time I'm going straight to my brake pedal. You see, the thing is, I just keep getting closer to the intersection, but my ultimate goal of 100% safety continues to be in question because of this visibility issue I'm still fighting. So I want to use my brake to be sure that I get down to a speed of about 20 kilometers per hour by the time I reach the 1 vehicle length distance. You see, I want to lower my speed like this because I don't have a lot of room left ahead of me. So if I do end up needing to stop, this lower speed means that I'll have much better odds of being able to stop before a collision could occur. Okay, speed has been taken care of, so I'll finish up with the rest of my quick scan, and then as far as step 3, communication goes, well, there's nothing further required. I'm using my brake pedal, so my brake lights are on. So I'm communicating. Okay, now it's time to start the steps for the 1 vehicle length distance, which would normally start with a my scan, but once again, things are a little abnormal because I still haven't completed a sweeping scan in this area to my left to my satisfaction. So I'm gonna have to try and attempt that yet again. So I get started with my scan, and what do you know, third time the charm. I finally have a sight line of the 3 vehicle length distance that I needed to see in this area. So I can say with confidence, this area is now considered 100% safe. No funny business going on here. So now that everything is peachy keen in the corridor to my left, I'm going to go straight from that last sweep and continue on from there. But instead of doing the usual my scan that is done at the 1 vehicle length distance, I want to turn it into a quick scan instead. Only because that visual blockage took a lot of my concentration, and I don't want to take the risk of not seeing a pedestrian or vehicle in any of these 8 important areas. And then if all is clear and it's safe to go, then I'll get back on the gas pedal as I enter the intersection and continue on my way. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this example of how to handle a honkin' big visual obstruction when we don't have the stop sign at the intersection. Okay, so now I want to quickly go over the difference where now I do have a stop sign. But let's approach this as if it's the first time I'm seeing this intersection. Okay, let's do this. So, as always, at the 3 vehicle length distance, I'll start with a sweeping scan, and that shows me just how bad the visual obstruction is on my left, which prompts me to take my foot off the accelerator right away. But then as I continue on with the sweeping scan, I see that my direction of travel has a stop sign. So I let out a sigh of relief because that changes things. You see, that visual blockage to my left is no longer scary because nothing can harm me from my left until I enter the intersection. So as I follow the 3-2-1 plan down to my stop, here I now have perfect visibility of the intersection. So once I've come to a stop, I can easily see the 3 vehicle length minimum that I must be able to see to consider the situation safe enough to enter the intersection. So when it comes time to start out from this stop, that huge landscaping no longer has any possible negative consequences. And that brings us to the end of this second scenario, where this time I did have a stop sign. Phew! Okay, let's just finish up by making this an uncontrolled intersection now. So this one's simple. You would handle it in the exact same way that you would in the first example we talked about at the two-way intersection where you didn't have the stop sign. But because of the visual obstruction, you had to get your speed down low enough to where you could stop quickly if it was necessary. So that's the exact same way that you would handle an uncontrolled intersection. And that brings us to the end of this video, so join me over at the next intersection safety video, Real Life Driving Part 2, which will drop next Tuesday, where we'll be talking about dealing with obstructions while making left turns. But before we say goodbye, if you found this video helpful, can you please help me by simply hitting that like button? And subscribe to help me out even further. Okay, that's it. So bye for now and take care.